Good morning, everyone. Welcome to Palo Alto University, our first open house of fall 2021. I hope everyone is staying safe, and we'd like to thank you for taking part in our open house today. You will hear from faculty members. They're also current students, and I'll let them introduce themselves. That if you have any questions that we can answer, we're here for you to do that. Elena Dunn is the Vice President of Admissions. I always get your title incorrect, but she is actually directing us today, and we're just really happy to have you all here. We want to thank you for coming. Again, my name is Erin Williams. I'm the Director of Outreach at Palo Alto University. I am available via email or phone to answer any questions that you don't get answered here today. We thank you, and hopefully you will enjoy this morning. Sorry, I'm on East Coast time, so I'm in the afternoon in my head, but welcome and thank you for attending.
Wonderful. So I think we'll jump right in. Is Genevieve with us, Dr. Arnaud?
I'm here.
Wonderful. So I have the presentation of Genevieve. If you just want to let me know when to advance the slides, I can do that for you.
Oh, sure. I thought I was afterwards.
Oh, do you want to do it yourself?
No, I just thought that I was going second.
Oh, okay. No, you're
I'm glad I'm here.
Do you want to do your introductions of the team in general, and then Eduardo can jump in on his slides?
Yes, that would be great.
Great.
So I am the Director of Clinical Training for the PhD program, and I have a wonderful team who helps me, Dr. Jamie Pita, who is in charge of overseeing our practicum sites, and Drs. Jan Lakin and Amy Haas, who are Associate Directors of Academic and Clinical Training. So they assist with research and coursework kinds of issues. Eduardo, do you want to introduce yourself? Since you had a picture there.
Sure. I wasn't sure if you were going to introduce me. Hello, everybody. I'm Eduardo Bunge. I'm the director of the master's program, the MS program.
Okay, I'll take it away. So just a little bit of information about PAU. Our university was founded in 1975, and we currently have about 1,200 students across 6 programs. We have 2 bachelor's completion programs, 2 master's programs, one of which Dr. Bunge is in charge of and will be speaking to you about. And the other is an MA in counseling. And then we have the PsyD and PhD doctoral programs. We are a not-for-profit school that is regionally accredited by what we refer to as WASC, the Western Association of Schools and Colleges. And the 2 doctoral programs are accredited by the American Psychological Association. The Master's in Counseling program is accredited by something called CACREP, the Council for Accreditation of Counseling and Related Educational Programs. And that is accredited for a full 8-year cycle since 2017. The PsyD program has been accredited for quite a while, but most recently got a 10-year reaccreditation, and the PhD program is in the middle of a 7-year accreditation cycle. When we got reaccredited, there was no such thing as a 10-year cycle. We offer residential and distance learning programs. The distance learning is not in either doctoral program, although this year with all of the online work that we have to do, it's beginning to feel like we're starting that way. And we have an international domestic student population in all of the programs, which is actually really quite fun. Next slide. We have 2 primary locations for the PhD and the PsyD program. I love how you've inserted Zoom as our 3rd location. The main campus is the Allen Calvin campus in Palo Alto, and it's lovely. I don't know if any of you have ever been there, but it's right on the border of a preserve, so we get to see all kinds of animals as we're driving in. And then we also have the Granowski Clinic, which is the internal training clinic that our students in the doctoral programs train in their 2nd year of the program. And I think that there's also some activities that happen there for students from the MS program as well. Dr. Bunge can tell us about that. And right now, all of our classes are virtual because we're not allowed to be anything other than online due to the county guidelines. But in general, if you were taking classes under normal circumstances, most of them would be at these 2 campuses. Next slide. Let's see. So it looks like this would be you, Eduardo.
Yeah, okay. Thank you, Xavier. So, hi again. The MS program may be kind of a perfect option for some of you. It has several tracks. The first one is that kind of the MS as a terminal degree. And there you have different options, career options, such as teaching, doing research. We have several students that end up doing research on user experience. And the MS degree has kind of 2 options. One is the general MS degree, and the other one is the forensic area of emphasis. And the other track that we have is the PhD preparatory track, which is kind of the one that is the most popular one. Basically, all the classes that you take in the 2 years MS program, that is online and part-time, is the equivalent of the first year full-time in person of the PhD program. So basically, you can do 1 year intensive in the PhD, or if you want to have a more gradual transition into graduate school, you can do 2 years part-time online. A couple of things that are important is being accepted into the MS program does not guarantee that you will transition to the PhD program. You have to meet certain requirements, such as not failing any class, having a good academic record, and you have to be interviewed at the end of the first year to see if you can transition to the PhD program. Elena, I believe I have another slide, or so just to give you an idea, during the first year of the MS program, all the classes are with Zoom meetings, so we have synchronous live classes. And the idea is that we try to get the best use of the online teaching skills. Just to give an example, I teach psychopathology too with children and adolescents. We post a video of the lecture on, let's say, what is depression. Then you can review a vignette on how to do an assessment of someone with depression or not. You have to determine if that person meets criteria or not. Then you will watch a video of a client and you have to see which are the symptoms of depression that they have or not. And when we meet in the live meetings, the idea is that we practice. So I can do the role of the client and a student will do the role of the therapist, and they will have to interview me and determine whether I have depression or not. What I'm trying to say is that the Zoom classes are not things that you do by yourself, online, alone, right? This is something that's very interactive, and you have a lot of interactions, not only with the instructor, but also with the classmates. We use a lot of breakout rooms and we discuss papers and research methods, etc. So during the first year of the program, every student in the MS takes the same classes. That is research methods 1, 2, and 3, and psychopathology 1, 2, and the child development and the aging class. At the end of the second year, at the end of the first year, you can decide which is the track that you're interested in. If you want to go into the PhD track, then you will have to take 47 units in total. That means 7 quarters, 7 terms. And you will have to come for an intensive week course during the spring break of the second year. If you end up doing everything well and you're accepted, you jump into the second year of the PhD program. Make sense? Now, if by the end of the first year, you realize that maybe the PhD is not the thing that you're interested on or maybe you may want to think that you want to go to another PhD somewhere else, you can finish the MS and choose to have kind of the general track or the forensic area of emphasis. The good thing of this is that you don't have to make any decision now. You can start in the program, you can see how do you feel, how do you perform, and based on that, make a decision. And the other thing that is not listed here is that by the end of the first year, if you realize that psychology is not your field or that the PhD is not what you're interested in, but you want to do clinical work, you can switch to the MA program, and most of the units that you take during the first year will be able to transfer to the MA. So the good thing of the MS program is that you have many options, so that we are sure that if you get accepted, you end up having something that is good for you.
Eduardo, maybe you could speak briefly about why a student might do PhD prep rather than jumping right into the PhD.
That is, of course, is a general, let's say it's a personal option at some point, but also sometimes we recommend that. A personal option would be if, let's say that we have some students that have been out of the academic world for many years, and they are afraid of how they will perform if suddenly they start taking 47 units in 1 year. In that case, doing a more gradual transition is a good option. In other cases, students may not be very strong candidates for the PhD program, and when they interview in the PhD, we may suggest, hey, it may be good for you, rather than jumping into a PhD program, to take the MS, see how you perform, gain some more research experience, and based on that, maybe you can transition to the PhD later. Or students that have kind of, I don't know, that didn't have a good academic record in the first years of college, yes, and there's some concerns about how would you perform in very high academic demanding courses in the PhD. The MS would be a good option for them too.
Thank you, Eduardo. There are two questions related to the MS. One is from Elena. She asks, if one wants to follow the PhD prep track online, can you then do the PhD online? And unfortunately, no. So the PhD is an in-person program normally. Right now we're online because of COVID, but you would need to move to Palo Alto at the conclusion of your MS to do the PhD. The other question, Eduardo, maybe you can address, do applicants to the PhD program compete with students transferring from the MS program into the PhD?
Usually the admission cycle is different. Those that apply to the PhD program, they are interviewed during the winter. Those that apply to the PhD program coming from the MS, they are interviewed in the summer. So usually those that are in the MS will get interviewed earlier than those that plan to get into the PhD directly.
Wonderful. Someone asked, can someone transfer from the MA program to the MS, so the other way?
That is possible. The one thing that happens there is that you may take many courses in the MA that are not necessarily transferable to the MS. The other way around, we structure the MS so that most of the classes in the first year can transfer into the MA. But yes, it is an option. In those cases, we usually take the psychopathology courses, the development courses, and one research methods maybe. That would be the courses that you can transfer.
Someone asked, is there a prep track for the PhD, or for the PsyD? Is the MS a transition to the PsyD? Not really. You can apply to the PsyD as a new student, but there's no formal relationship between those two programs. Let's see what other questions we have.
Someone asked if they apply to the PhD program and are denied, could you be placed in the MS program? Yes, that's an option that happens every once in a while. And you can get into the MS program just as a terminal degree, and you can even try to see if you can be admitted again into the PhD program, right?
Yeah, so if you interview, or even if you don't interview for the PhD, we may invite you to do the MS program because we see potential and we want to make sure that you reach your goals. So that's a process that's internal to admissions. Eduardo, I don't know if you want to take this question. What's the difference between the MA, the MS, and the PhD? What do students do with those degrees when they graduate?
Okay, so the MA is in counseling, and you will gain experience in mostly how to counsel individuals. It's a degree that takes 2-3 years, and you will be doing clinical work mostly. You won't be doing research, you won't be doing assessment, and the approach to the content sometimes has kind of a different theoretical framework. That's the MA. The MS is not a terminal degree. It's not a licensable degree. The MS by itself, you cannot see clients unless that you transition into the PhD, of course. And the PhD is a 5 years or 6 years program that's way more intense, and I can let Genevieve talk about that. That is a very quick answer. Genevieve, you may have a little bit more of information to add to this question.
Yeah, I think that was a great foundation of an answer, because if you do want to be licensed at a master's level, you really would want to go the MA route, because you would want to be in the counseling field. The psychology field right now is looking at licensing master's level clinicians and master's level program accreditation, but that's not going to be till years down the road. So if you think you want to see clients primarily and you think a master's is the right fit for you, then a master's in counseling would be the way to go. In terms of a doctoral degree versus master's degree, as Dr. Bungay said, there are some additional things you would be doing with a doctoral degree, one of which is learning a lot more about psychological assessment, one aspect of which is psychological testing. You've probably all heard about intellectual testing, for example, or neuropsychological testing. That's something that's typically very specific to a doctoral degree. If you want a particular area of emphasis. So in the master's program, we have the forensic psychology track, and I have to say I'm a forensic psychologist, so I love to see that that's your primary content track, other than the PhD prep and generalist. In the PhD program, we have other emphases like, besides forensic, neuropsychology, and you'll see on another slide, there's a number of them, diversity and community mental health and so forth. So there's an opportunity to specialize in certain areas, and then there's the opportunity and actually requirement to do research in those areas. So it prepares you to work more in academic medical centers, in hospitals, in state hospitals, in college counseling centers. There's a huge variety of things you can do with the doctorate that go beyond, say, private practice or community mental health, seeing clients at a master's level.
Wonderful. Thomas asked, can you explain why the MS does not prepare you for the PsyD? The important distinction, Thomas, is that the MS program is identical basically to the first year of the PhD. And so you enter the PhD program in the second year when you do transition over. The PsyD has a distinct curriculum. So it's much more like you're applying as a new student that happens to have upper division, graduate level credit. So they are distinct programs. And it's just a different style of doing admissions to that program. There's a question, are there prerequisite courses in psychology one needs for the MS program? Yes, we'll get into that in a little bit later. There are, if you're not a psych major, there are 4 courses that you need to take in order to do the PhD prep program, or the MS program in general. Fatima asks, if someone is in the process of completing their undergraduate degree and graduating spring 2021, can they apply for the MS or PhD program for fall 2021? Yes, so you can have a degree in progress and still apply and be admitted to the programs. You would be admitted as a conditional student, meaning we're assuming you're going to graduate, we're assuming you're going to pass all the classes that you're in your current term. Should you not, we would withdraw your offer of admission. That almost never happens, but it is a conditional admission. Okay, any other questions for, oh, one more. Can you get your MA and then apply to the PhD? You certainly can. Many students have master's degrees before applying to the PhD. You probably wouldn't be in the PhD program 5 or 6 years because not many of the units would likely transfer over. So that's probably a discussion that we could have privately about which of those paths might be a better choice for you given your professional goals and how much time you want to be in school. Okay. Let's, I think at this point, transition over. Eduardo, are you able to stay with us if there are other questions?
Yes.
Later on? Wonderful. Okay. Oh, and there's one more slide for you. I don't know if you want to talk about any of these or if you felt like you covered it already.
So I can expand a little bit more. The issue of the classes that are via Zoom is usually 2 evenings a week, usually between 5 and 8:30 in Pacific time during the weekdays. And it says 44 units. It's actually 37.5 if you're in the MS degree as a terminal degree, or 47 if you're in the PhD track. And it's a cohort model, so usually you take the classes with the same number of students. The cohorts, we try to keep them not larger than 24 students, so that we get to know the students and you can have the chance to interact with all of your classmates. And actually in the MS program, we encourage all instructors to include assignments to be done in pairs or in groups, so that you also interact with your classmates outside the classroom time. And that's something that we work a lot in, building the cohort so that students are part of a group. Although you're taking the classes from your home, you're part of the community.
Thank you. All right, let's transition to Geneviève in the PhD program.
Great, thanks. So the PhD program is built to be a 5-year full-time program. Sometimes students take 6 years. For example, if you're in the neuropsych emphasis, we recommend that you take 6 years. It's a unique model. You may have heard of a scientist practitioner model, which was the initial model of training for psychologists at the doctoral level. And the PAU PhD program actually tries to do more of a balance of clinical practice and research rather than primarily doing research. So rather than it being scientist practitioner, we see it as a practitioner scientist model, that you're both doing and understanding research while you're also learning to practice. Next slide. So for example, in the research training, we have faculty who are very productive in a variety of areas of research and scholarship, and they each have a research lab. Students in their first year of the program are matched with a research lab faculty member. Students apply to the labs in the spring term of their first year, and then they work with faculty members to conduct research. Many of them get presentations and publications, and you must do a dissertation. At the same time, you're also doing clinical training. So there's didactic training, academic training that supports that. There's training in psychopathology and evidence-based treatments and assessment and doing therapy. You do clinical work and supervision in the first practicum with clients at a clinic that we have that's called the Granowski Center. That's our internal training clinic. That's the one that's in Los Altos. And you would start that if you came into the PhD program, not from the MS program, you would start that in the summer of your first year. And then you would continue on through your second year. This slide must have somehow gotten changed. We no longer have the Office of Professional Advising and Development. That's now been merged with, that used to be me. I was the director, and I'm now the Director of Clinical Training in the PhD program. The Directors of Clinical Training, me and Dr. Pita, we oversee the practicum placements and the internship placements. After you complete the internal training clinic placement in your second year, you then are eligible for an external placement. And one of the things I love about this area is we have something called BAPIC, which stands for Bay Area Practicum Information Cooperative. And that is an organization of 9 schools in the Bay Area and a huge, vast number of practicum placements, things like the San Francisco VA and the Palo Alto VA and community mental health centers and college counseling centers and so forth. And the students in these 9 schools apply through this one system, the BAPIC system, for these placements. They get interviewed, and then there's a computer matching for them. So there are chances to be at, I think there's actually more than 100 different kinds of placements. So because we're in this area, because we're in this collective, we have access to a much greater number of clinical placements than you might have at other schools. And you do those external placements in your 3rd and 4th year of the program. And then the last year, either the 5th or the 6th year, is what's called an internship. And that is a 2,000-hour, meaning full-time, full-year training program in which you are placed at an accredited internship across the country through a national computer match process. And that's typically a training that is in your area of specialization. So let's advance to the next slide.
We do have one question, Genevieve.
Oh, sure.
What happens if the program is 5 or 6 years? Is it due to the speed at which the dissertation is completed? And secondly, for someone with prior research training who's currently a registered MFT, is there a way to shorten the program?
Let me start with the first one, about 5 or 6 years. That is dependent on a couple of things. As I mentioned, if you're in the neuropsych emphasis, that's typically a 6-year program because we do have to make sure that you get specialized assessment training. And that's not something you can get in your first or second year. You have to have had all the assessment classes. In addition, there are times when there are students who are very focused on research and who want to be in academia, for example, and they get heavily involved in research and decide they would like to not only do their dissertation, they want to do additional research, and they may take an extra year. Or it may be that somebody wants to do extra clinical placements. So there are a variety of reasons why people may progress through in 5 or 6 years, but the curriculum is built on a 5-year model. In terms of somebody with research training who's currently licensed, can it be shortened? You might be able to have some courses transferred in if they are applicable, but you do have to complete a certain number of clinical training hours. You must do the internships. So it's unlikely that you could do it in fewer than 5 years. That would be something we'd have to sit down and take a look at. This is a 5-year curriculum here in front, and you see our happy graduates at the end there, at the end of 5 years. First, you have didactic coursework and apply for research labs in your first year, and then the second year is when things start really becoming much more intensive. That's when you are working in your research lab, you're taking the assessment and therapy focused courses rather than the more foundational courses, and you're doing your clinical training all at once. So that's when students, I think, find that this becomes a more rigorous program. Not that it isn't in the first year, there's a lot of coursework, but you're balancing 3 different types of activities after you start in your second year, and you continue to balance those all the way through year 3 and year 4. You typically begin starting on your dissertation, that large research project, that's your own project that you have to complete before you leave, in your 3rd year. And you also will be taking some an oral competency exam in year 3. And when all of those, when you've proposed your dissertation, not finalized, but proposed what you want to do and taken the oral exam and completed the other competencies, you earn your Master of Science degree at that point in clinical psychology. You advance to your 4th year where you're applying for internships, continuing in practicum, completing your dissertation. And in your 5th year, that's when you should be off to internship. And next slide.
We did have one question. Are the 2,000 hours from internship valid for the 3,000 supervised hours required for licensure?
Yeah, that's a great question. Part of the reason I'm not going to just say a blanket yes is that every state has different licensure requirements. So some states do require a postdoctoral year. Other states do not require a postdoctoral year, but you had to have pre-internship hours. Then there's also neuropsych, for example, which no matter what state you're in requires a 2-year postdoctoral placement after your internship in order to be a board certified neuropsychologist. So in most cases, I mean, the 2,000 hours for internship will always count toward whatever internship requirement there is for licensure. And then you would have to look at whatever state you're going to be licensed in. For example, I was licensed in Oregon, still am licensed in Oregon, and I did have to have another 1,500 that was post-doctoral. Not every state is like that. Washington, for example, does not require that. So you'd just have to look at each state. Just to give you an idea of the variety of research labs, we have a huge number. And frankly, I think it would be difficult to select if you were a student. There's everything from neuropsych to meditation to culture and trauma and forensics. We have just a huge variety. And what we do in the first year is we set up research lab brown bags, we call them, or seminars, so that students can hear about the types of research, talk to other students, and find out what it's like being in that lab before they apply. I can see that someone's asking about the terms practicum and internship. They are different. A practicum is a part-time placement that you complete while you're also taking classes and completing dissertation. And those placements are typically, the full-time ones are 20 to 24 hours a week, and the part-time are less than 20 hours a week. Those in some states can count towards licensure. That's different from the full-time required accredited internship that you do for your final year before you graduate. Next one. So here are our areas of emphasis: pediatric behavioral health care, diversity and community mental health, forensic psychology, LGBTQ plus psychology, meditation and psychology, neuropsychology, and the psychology of trauma. You also do not have to be in an area of emphasis. And I tried to create a slide that would tell you when you needed to apply for these. The only thing I can tell you that's true for all of these is you do not have to apply to them before you come into the program. You don't tell us at the time you're entering the program, I'd like to apply for this area of emphasis. You can certainly tell us your preference and your interests, but there's no separate application for the area of emphasis at the time of application. These vary in terms of when you would become a member or would complete the emphasis. Some of them you just have to take the courses and you have automatically completed the emphasis. Others of them you must formally be accepted. And I tried to create a slide that told you what was true for each one, and every single one of these is different. You apply at different times. Sometimes you apply before you take the classes, other times after you take the classes. So the best advice I can give you is, if you're interested in these, get on the website and see what the requirements are. Students are supposed to take 18 elective units, meaning they are supposed to have classes that you choose from among all the variety of options that go beyond the required classes. And typically the 18 units that you take are in these areas of emphasis.
John, we have someone asked if you can have multiple areas of emphasis.
Yeah, that's a wonderful question. You could potentially. That would be when you might start thinking you're going to be going longer than 5 years, because each of these requires several courses. You frequently have to have a practicum in that area. You often have to complete your dissertation in that area. So it is possible, but you'd need to coordinate it. You might need to take extra classes. You might be able to, for example, create a dissertation that covers 2 areas. One in my former program, one that was very frequent was people wanted to be in the Latino bilingual track and forensic psychology because they were concerned about working with that population in the correctional institutions. So there are ways to do that, and it is possible. Sometimes, though, you may want to say, well, gee, I'm interested in forensics and neuropsychology. I would like to do neuropsychology with correctional populations. In that case, because the neuropsychology emphasis takes a long time, I would recommend getting, and because it's a very specialized field, I would recommend getting the neuropsych experience first, and then maybe taking a forensic course so that you know how to work with that population if you're a neuropsychologist. But that would be a fabulous question to ask of an advisor or of the track emphasis, directors when you come into the program.
There's 2 quick admissions related questions. Should applicants mention the professors or labs they would like to work and be matched in? We do ask. Unlike many programs, you are not applying to a lab. So if you have still somewhat broad-based interests, we can be a good fit for you there. And someone asked if you already have an MS degree or transferable credits, when can we talk about that? We can talk about that at any point. The assessment of your credits does not happen until after admission, however.
And then it looks like Thomas is asking about, are there relationships with veterans groups with the trauma emphasis? There are a number of faculty members who do research with veterans, and we have very strong ties with the Palo Alto VA and the San Francisco VA. So it would not just be in the psychology of trauma, although that would obviously be a clear area of application for it. But there's a lot of different ways to work with trauma and veterans in our program. This is a slide just of the Gronowski Center. One of the neat things about the Gronowski Center is, besides being a community-based training clinic with a sliding scale fee, we do have some specialized care. There's the Sexual and Gender Identities Clinic, which is a really wonderful training experience. The Inner Resources Center, which is the meditation clinic. We have an early intervention clinic for children and families, and we have La Clínica Latina, which serves Spanish-speaking clients. So those are also experiences that students can participate in. One of the things that PAU is very committed to is equity and inclusion. We have a number of student groups dedicated to diversity. This is just a sampling of some of the, this is in the PhD program, some of the groups that we have here. We also have a Center for Excellence in Diversity that is established to promote and coordinate activities, and also to be looking at different types of research that we can be doing. As you saw, we have the Diversity and Community Mental Health track. We have had students win awards in this area, and this year we're spending a lot of time in the PhD program training faculty, working with faculty on learning how to incorporate more discussion in programs, decolonizing our syllabi. There's just a lot going on in this area. One of the things I'm doing in clinical training is conducting research on microaggressions committed towards clinicians by clients and other people, because that's a very important area that a lot of students are struggling with. So you'll find a lot of activity here going on, and we've got a lot of commitment to this. We have exceptional faculty. Dr. Bunge is right in the middle there. Dr. Bunge, you could talk about your research, but I'll talk a little bit about some of the others. You see on the right, we have Dr. Lisa Brown, who does a lot of work with trauma, and Dr. Tessita Tormola, who is our Director of Equity and Inclusion. She's a social psychologist. We have Dr. Alin Barrera, who works with Spanish-speaking students, clients and populations, along with Dr. Munoz, who's up in the top left. Dr. Joyce Chu has won awards for her work in diversity research. We have Dr. Friedberg in the middle there, who has written books on cognitive therapy with children and adolescents, just a huge variety. Dr. Balsam is very well known, was president of the division for LGBTQ in APA. Dr. Bunge, would you like to just mention what your area of research is?
Yeah, so my research lab is children and adolescents, psychotherapy, and technology. Basically, we're trying to find ways in which technology can help us reach more people and improve the outcomes of what we do when we reach them. So some of the things that we're working on are chatbots, internet interventions. I have students doing dissertations on virtual reality, on the use of Google Glasses to assess social skills on kids with ASD, with autism spectrum disorders. So whatever technology can help us do our job better, that's something that I'm interested in.
Okay. The nice thing is, with our exceptional faculty, we have exceptional students who do a lot of presentations and publications, book chapters. The faculty try to have students as co-authors. We try to have the students publish or present their dissertations. In fact, it's a requirement that students do have a publication presentation, or they are authors on a faculty publication or presentation before they graduate. And I'm aware of our time here, so how about would you want to take this away here, Elena, because it's admissions?
I will, yeah. So some of you may be interested in the Side D as well. So feel free to jump off into the Side D session, but we're going to stick around and finish our presentation here. And remember, everything will be recorded, so you're welcome to watch it later. We're not going to go deeply into admissions today. This session is really designed to whet your appetite as the kickoff of a series of webinars. But I will mention that admissions requirements for the PhD and MS are similar, but not identical. So both programs operate on rolling admissions, which means that we review applications as they come in, and we send out admissions letters every couple of weeks. What that means is that there are priority application deadlines for most programs, and those are the deadlines to which we suggest you set your goal in terms of getting your application in. The reason being is that we could fill up at any given point in the spring. And so these dates are really your guaranteed review dates, meaning we will still have space available at that point. So that's what a priority application deadline means. Some years we've continued to interview and admit students into May. Others we close early. So planning ahead is always good. It's a fairly standard set of requirements. You can see the 4 prerequisite classes on our website. We do ask for a resume or CV, a statement of purpose, letters of recommendation, and transcripts. All of that stuff is sent to SciCast, which is our central application system. So SciCast is great because if you're looking at us and other programs that also use SciCast, you only have to submit these materials once. So you're not submitting anything directly to PAU, everything goes to SciCast. The GRE scores are something I do want to call out. So the MS program does not require GRE scores. So you can enter that program in any track without GREs, and you actually don't need to take them before you transfer to the PhD program. So for some students, that's a real benefit to that program. The PhD does require GRE scores. However, this year in particular, we recognize that there are a lot of obstacles to getting the GRE done, particular to COVID-19. So we are offering a process by which you can request a waiver of the GREs, and that information can be found on our website as well. A quick question, can prerequisite courses be completed the summer before beginning the program, or must they be completed at the time of the application? That's a great question. We assume that they will be done before you start classes. So you will indicate on your application that you intend to take courses. And again, that will mean that you'll be offered conditional admission. So if you don't take those courses, if you don't pass those courses, there is a chance we could rescind your admission, but we don't assume that you'll have them done before you apply. I want to encourage you all to join us for a deep dive on October 8th or November 17th. That will take 45 minutes and really dive into the admissions process for these programs. That session will also be for PsyD applicants. Many of you are considering the PhD and the PsyD, so we'll talk about how you apply for both and how you differentiate your applications for each program, as well as what interviews look like for those programs as well. Question about GREs, do we honor GRE scores within the last 5 years? Yes. So it's a 5-year time period as for most schools. Okay. That's the end. We're very nearly on time. I'm so impressed. Are there any other questions that folks want to submit via chat for any of our panelists? Doesn't look like it. Okay, so if that's the case, I am going to go ahead and stop the recording.